Okay, we are recording. Mark, how are you today?
Very good, Stu. Very good.
Good,
Excited
good,
about
good.
this.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And I'm gonna jump straight in because this when I received the songs from your playlist, um, it was quite a unique set of songs, and there's a few covers where obviously I know the originals, but there's lots of songs on there that I'd not heard before,
Huh.
and I like to think I'm a little bit of a muso. And this is I've done like 560 episodes of this, and I generally know most of the songs that guest pick. So
Ah,
we're going to have
okay.
a good chat today because I'm going to be
Oh, good.
picking your brain.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got, I, yeah, I have got an unusual set of tastes. I like everything. There's very few things I don't like. I
Wonderful.
mean, even country music I like. You know.
It's so weird. That's generally what I get. It's like, no, no, I listen to anything. Even country music. People always throw that one in on me head.
Well, I don't know because it seems so selective, doesn't it? You have to be sort of an American from Midwest to listen to country music, and they
Yeah.
listen to nothing else. So, but yeah, no, that's not my case.
Well, I'm going to ask you to kick off today's playlist with the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please, Mark.
Well, that's the House of Blue Lights by LMA Morse. And this is, I mean, so you have to understand. So the people who run Lush are formulators. So unlike most cosmetic companies or any company really, we're pretty obsessed with product and we formulate product and we come up with names for product. And me personally, so there's five of us that do that, right? Me personally, I am really, really sort of looking for stuff from music, looking for little lines, tiny bits that just inspire. And they're often very obscure. So that's why, um, this particular piece has got a very long verbal intro, right? Um, with marvelous words like "hep" in it, which hasn't been used since Audrey Hepburn died. And in that particular intro, I managed to nick three different product names. All right, so so it had to be the intro I chose because otherwise I'd be being rude.
Yeah.
I nicked all the product names out of it, and then yeah, to not choose that. So
Oh, I don't know what happened there. Everything just froze and locked on me there.
yeah, yeah, we think it was you because we were still here.
Oh gosh. Right, let's drop back in. Let's drop back in. Sorry about that. That was really surreal. I was just listening to one. I thought, oh, that's just frozen. My face is still moving. No one else's is. Okay, right.
So, but I mean, you can tell me where you'd like to start
Yeah.
again.
Um, I'd like to sort of. I mean, I think it's great that you've sort of, credited that record after sort of drawing inspiration for product names from it. Um, but I want to sort of go back a little bit and kind of find out a little bit about how you become
Yeah.
a music fan and a lover of music, and it isn't,
Uh,
from
yeah. Give me a second to just get that straight in my head. Um, you see, because that long intro, that's just. I mean, I'm very prone to mischief, right? And it's if I find something irresistible, I just hear. I mean, let's just talk for a few seconds, and then you can. I'm really happy to be directed any way it works for you. So
sure.
you don't have to worry. I'm not on any kind of instruction or anything like that. But if we, because I jotted a few thoughts down. So if we take two Leonard Cohen tracks, right? Dance Me to the End of Love
Oh, what a record.
and Sisters of Mercy. Now, Dance Me to the End of Love. There's a wonderful set of lines, right? Yesterday I spoke to four colleagues or five colleagues, all suffering badly with anxiety. You can't do anything. You can just chat through. And these lines, dance me through the panic till I'm safely gathered in. Lift me like an olive branch, be my homeward dove. Now that, apart from the fact everyone's anxious and needs a bit of, cheering up and a bit of something, but that whole thing of needing direction. And then I nicked Olive Branch. I just took Olive Branch out as a product name, because I was trying to make a blend of oils in there that would fit. So let's just talk about Sisters of Mercy for a minute. Now, I don't know when I first listened to Sisters of Mercy, I was probably, think I was 16, right? And I was at an all-night party, and I met my wife there. And I was drunk. But there's a line in there about the Sisters of Mercy, and I touched the dew on their hems. Now, I heard it back then, but I've only just done a perfume called Dew on the Hems. Yeah. So that's been taken away in there. It's such a weird thing anyway, because he's such a strange artist, isn't he? In terms of using strong religious imagery that you're never too sure whether they're nuns or prostitutes. You don't know where you are. And that, I like that.
But that's the magic of Leonard Cohen, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the magic. And of course, he's a huge poet. So that all of that stuff. So it's difficult for me to unravel the poetry and the imagery and my stupid, dreamy brain. Do you see what I mean? And for me, I don't care if anybody gets it. I really could not care that it's nothing to do with them. It's to do with me.
Yeah.
So I can go in, I can go into I mean, once we get into the stuff on what was the first song, I can go into much more of the past there if that works for you.
Before we get on to the second track, Mark, just sort of looking back at what you just said there, and how them product names are something that's quite personal to you, and you've drawn them from things. Have you ever been approached by customers that have made that link and have sort of ever said to you, like,
Yeah,
is that from?
Well, it's all very weird. People will contact you from way, way back. I mean, not just recently. I had a customer the other day contact me. Did I remember approaching her in a restaurant it must have been 25 years ago, 20 years ago. Yeah, I do remember because I thought her husband looked perfect for a particular perfume that I've made that was inspired by my dad. So in this case, not the perfume's called Dear John, and it's about you have to be close to someone. It's a personal perfume. In other words, you get in the lift, you're not going to be like gagging to get out. Do you know what I mean? It's a person, and he seemed very nice like that, very together. Do you know what I mean? Just a very nice man, and I'm only observing from my dinner table. I'm not.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did remember. And then I can't even, to be honest, Gina might be able to tell us. She contacted you, didn't she, Gina? Sorry, I know we're not. Are we doing the actual thing? I don't know.
She
Anyway,
did. She sent me an email just saying how much she loved our perfume fragrance called Ginger, and how she was synesthetic and she'd worn it for years and years, and that Lush perfumes were the only ones that she could use. And she told me how she met Mark years and years ago in a restaurant where I think you'd had a conversation with her and her husband, and she remembered it vividly, and she didn't think that Mark would remember because it was so many years ago, and Mark did. Mark remembered it.
Although I'm now of an age where I'm too creepy to approach people. Yeah, you could approach people who didn't think it was creepy, but now I think it's a bit creepy. But
I run a music venue and have done for 33 years, and it's only over the last sort of 5 to 10 years that I've now realized that the younger girls and guys that go to the club now no longer look at me as like the cool DJ. Now they now look at me like I'm one of their dad's responsible mates, and so I just kind of I know exactly what you're saying.
Well, I was chatting to one of my colleagues because I've never clubbed. Okay, so what do I do with that? and then she said to me, "Well, my dad's about your age." She said he got really into trance when that came. I thought, yeah, so did I. And but you see what I mean. So then I was away, but she sort of, it was definitely right. We'll pop you in that little pot there, and then you'll probably be right. And yeah, she was right. Sadly, I'd
Fantastic.
like to think that was more unique.
Well, we'll get to clubbing
Yeah,
shortly,
yeah, yeah. I know. I
but
know.
before we do, I'm going to sort of take you back and ask you, please, Mark, to tell
Yes.
me the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Um, well, this will have an emotional impact on everyone. It's Past Caring, sung by Jackie Oates. Now I know Jackie Oates really well. She's a lovely, lovely folk singer, just stunning voice. She's also sort of, I don't know if she's presently doing it, but she teaches music at a school, and there's always that element of sort of, almost, you can almost feel you could sing along and she's playing the piano. In this particular rendition of Past Caring, she's just doing it on a drone, so she's singing over the drone. And Past Caring is a poem written by Henry Lawson, and he was alive 1867 to 1922, and he's one of Australia's great poets, and he wrote this unbelievably tragic song about this woman living, in a deserted farm where husbands had to leave her to go and earn money somewhere else. Her last milker's just dying. And I've listened to this song more often than any other song. So it's not just something like, oh, it means more to me than that. And what it means to me is uh, be grateful for what you've got. The human condition is such. We have, as humans, we've had some pretty desperate moments, and some of us are having desperate moments now. So make the most of what you got. Yeah, it's later than you think. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's why I like this particular song, "Past Caring."
Mark, if you had to pinpoint the actual emotion that you feel, what would it be?
Well, an empathy for the desolation.
Beautifully answered there.
That's it. An
Yeah.
empathy for the desolation. I'm not her. I didn't suffer that. I don't have to. I'm so lucky. None of my family are going to suffer that. But she suffered it. And that poem, that's real. I mean, you can go back to those times. We see we live in civilized times, don't we, relatively, and we have modern problems and we don't have problems like she had. But a lot of people have parts of the problems she had. Do you know what I mean? And it's very easy to sort of take things for granted. I don't just mean when you're a fortunate man like me. I mean for anyone.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what home was like growing up, and was it a musical environment? And if so, what was you hearing at home?
No, it wasn't a musical environment. I had a period of time up until I was 12 living. So my dad left when I was 2. He went to Africa. We were supposed to follow, but my mum didn't fancy it, so we went to my nan's. And then I was brought up by my nan, and my mum worked, and my auntie used to come round, and that was it. It was a very female-orientated household, and I was extremely happy, to say the least. Then my stepdad came along, who was he was renting a room in the house, and my mum married him. That didn't work out so well for me. My nan died within months of us leaving. And I know, looking back now, that I blamed all of us. I thought it broke her heart when I left. And I just believed that had I stayed, she would have lasted longer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think from then on, he had this awkward teenager, and my mum had, um, who blamed them, who was living in the same house. So by 16, I'd gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so I was listening to music. I had a tiny dance set, right, which I could put in a drawer to get the sound a bit better. A drawer so I kept a drawer in me dressing table for that. Do you know what I mean? So I could close the drawer and it would sound okay, or it wouldn't sound so absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was it. So no, was it a particularly musical house? No, just radio and things like that. Um, but but I think all of us, I mean, we're talking late 60s, music was so powerful.
Yeah,
It became everything in our lives. You know what I mean? Which is why I'm still there now. I'm still there fishing round in a track for a bit of inspiration. I've not moved on in that sense. Do you see what I
yeah,
mean? It formed me and I didn't, I always love that line, I must be musical. I've got hundreds of CDs. That that's where I've been. I mean, I had a record company for a period of time with Simon Emerson and things like that. But he used to patronize me really, I think. I've had a lovely time, but yeah. So I've always loved music, but I think it came in there. I mean, I can remember so vividly Magical Mystery Tour and Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It was such a big event. You
yeah,
got the album, you went round your mates. I mean, the Leonard Cohen, my friend Pete's mum, I mean, she despaired. I don't know how many times we listened to the two main Leonard Cohen albums over and over and over again. Of course, she used to think that we were going to commit suicide or something. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It was so downbeat, which is why I know every single word
yeah.
well, just about all of them.
And I think that period of time, I think you was lucky to be at a good age to experience that sweet spot of the mid to late 60s where it went from that kind of traditional rock and roll style to psychedelia eking into it, and seeing the Beatles and the Beach Boys progress in it's so strange when you look at the Beatles as an example, and the Beach Boys, like they put out so much music in such a short space of time, and every album is such a progression. And
Yeah.
and could theoretically, in this day and age, I'm sure a lot of major labels would be like, "Whoa, you're going to alienate your fan base. You're too radical with this change." Whereas they didn't give a shit. They just kept pushing and
I
pushing.
think they still struggled though, didn't they? Didn't they have to do a lot of stuff?
I imagine that the record. I know the internal fight within the Beach Boys around Pet Sounds was just like, you can't put this out, Brian. This makes no sense. This is not Surfing USA. And but then
Yeah.
even with what was going on at Motown, and you look at that point, Marvin Gaye writes "What's Going On," which Berry Gordy didn't want to release. He thought it was atrocious.
Well, I
And
can understand that. I mean, we do, Lush, we do a lot of political stuff, and there's always someone who says we shouldn't do it. I mean internally, there's always someone, you really think, yeah, I can do it. So I think that's always been the case, I think that, yeah. Well, I went to two big mega concerts this year. I went to see Taylor Swift with my granddaughter. And I got this lovely video of her singing her heart out with tears in her eyes to the first track, right? And then I went with my wife to Paul McCartney. Now, this is quite interesting because I thought in our 50 years of marriage, I had had a brownie point before, but I got a major brownie point for this, and I've never had one before, I realize now. Anyway, she loved it so much. And the first track that he sung, she was singing along, and I took a video, and they are identical.
oh, how beautiful!
Granddaughter singing to Taylor Swift and her singing to Paul McCartney. Yeah, yeah. So that was very nice.
Oh, lovely!
And they were both quite nice concerts, but I particularly liked Janelle Monáe, and that was the best concert of the year.
Oh, fantastic!
So yeah, and The Age of Pleasure, that album, I think it's stunning. So yeah, so there we are, three different experiences.
Well, Mark, I'm going to keep you in your formative years for the next track,
Yes. Yeah,
and I'm going to ask you to tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school, please.
yeah. We're talking about Gunga Din by the Birds. Now, one of the formative films that we saw was Easy Rider. Yeah, everyone went and saw Easy Rider. Everyone wanted to drive, like choppers, and that was in your imagination, of course, because you couldn't afford one, and even if you could, probably illegal. Uh, and Gunga Din. It was by the Birds. It's just so dreamy and so of that period, and just about everything on that album is special. But this is one of the only ones that doesn't have drug references.
Yeah,
Uh, and there's this just reference, and if we go back to a product again, because this is something. Okay, so I'm a perfumer, all right, and perfumers can get rated with stars by a marvelous guy called Luca Turin, who does like like a Michelin guide to perfumes. I've never had a 5 star, right? My son, who's also a perfumer, he's had a 5 star, but I never had one. And so I was just fiddling about at work, and I'd listened to a track called "The Fog" by this accordionist. It was just a lovely folk artist, and I'd seen him perform it, and I'd said to him, I got up and said, I think I could do a perfume to that. And so I did this sort of smoky, foggy perfume, and then I was listening to Gunga Din, and they've got this bit where they go where he can't he talks about it was the 60s. He's wearing a leather jacket, and they want to go for some breakfast, but he doesn't think they'll let him in. And then I wanted to bring that to a modern reference. And I thought about leather. If you're wearing a leather, so vegan, you go to a vegan restaurant, they wouldn't let you in because you're wearing a leather jacket. Um, and so I did this perfume, and I called, and I did it. The idea was you could rub it on a vegan leather jacket to make it smell better, to make it smell like real rock and roll. And so yeah, so we did this vegan leather jacket perfume based on just that tiny thought inside Gunga Din, and I got 5 stars from Luca Turin.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm so pleased with that. I have made up with that. And he came in, we wrote it in, we got a little store in Beach Street for the perfumes, and we've got his quote up there. And he came in and he got photographed underneath. So, well, yeah, I was made up. Yeah.
In regards to your time at school, like, was that something that you enjoyed, Mark?
No. I spent more time outside the classroom. I don't know what. I don't think I was that disruptive. I really don't. But anyway, everyone else did. No, I was dreadful. I had a dreadful school. I mean, it was nice enough. It was a grammar school. I did get a reasonable education in between times. Um, no, awful.
Did you have any idea what you wanted to be when you was at school?
I did want to. I knew I wanted to write, making on books, and read a lot, which I do. Here and there. I've just written a poetry book. So basically, uh, I met a lady that runs a poetry pharmacy where she diagnoses a poetry for you when you've got a problem.
That's
And
incredible.
I know, she sells these little tiny tablets. So she rolls them up, right? These little tiny snippets of poetry, puts them in a tablet, and you can have a pot of tablets, and you open the thing up and take these little tablets out. Anyway, I thought she should be much more exposed. She's in some weird village in the middle of nowhere, and I wanted her to be more out there. And so I started to write to her. She started to write to me. I started to exchange poems with her because I love poetry, and she started to send them back to me, and it turned into a book because she's basically grown her business now into a sort of bit of a nightmare. Oh, here we go. Bishop's Castle is where she is. Yeah, I mean the whole village is now rolling up little bits of poetry and shoving it in.
That's such a beautiful idea.
Oh, she's stunning. She's really, and so it was good fun. So the book is actually our exchanges while I'm trying to encourage her to not be cleaning the toilets and making coffee in bloody Bishops, whatever, and actually in central London showing off and being fabulous. And so it ended up, well, no, I won't tell everyone where it ended up. Get the book.
Yes, exactly. Get the book. I'm going to ask you now to tell me the first record you remember buying from a record store, please, Mark.
Um, well, I used to work in a record shop in Weymouth. So I was brought up in Weymouth. That's where my nan was, yeah. And on the seafront there was a shop called Austin's. And Austin's, we would sell sun cream and inflatables at the front, confectionery, and I don't know what was on the left. next down, and then there was a big record bit at the back, which was lovely. I mean, absolutely lovely. Except people used to shag a lot in the bloody listening booths, but apart from that, it was lovely. And the first
When was this, Mark? What sort of when are we talking?
hang on a minute. Well, I was born 1952, and I must have been 16 when I worked there. Yeah, you worked from 14 those days.
Yeah.
Um, and and basically at the same time, the local tech had a concert, and the main act was the Nice. I can because always think of America as it. They
Yeah.
were the Nice, right? And the Nice were supported by it was Wall of Sound. What's his name? Edgar Brighton Band. But then the third in the act on a tiny little stage on the side was Thin Lizzy.
Wow.
And so I went along to that. I mean, I'd already bought his album, Emerson's album, as it were, to me, and the track America from that, which was off of West Side Story. It was their prog thing, and I'm quite well known for being keen on prog.
It's weird, isn't it? Because there's a little bit of sort of prog's a dirty word to a lot of people, isn't it? And I don't get it. I think it's
What I
fine.
like to do is, I mean, I like old prog, right? And you can see that in these different, because what I've been doing is doing autobiographical vinyls for each decade. So I'm on my fourth now,
Hmm.
um, and you can see on that first one, there's quite a lot of prog. Um, I also what I like to do is I then go and search modern prog. So I'll have playlists of just modern prog, just like I might country music or anything else. So I like all that stuff. I don't tend to, and I like the fact that it's niche. Anyway, America, yeah, off of the thoughts of Emily Stabjack, was the first song that I bought. Although I was tempted, I did find the zombie. She's not there in a box in the local village hall, which was the actual first record I got my hands on,
Yeah.
but I didn't buy it, so I didn't think it fitted the thing.
Okay. Um, I want to. You touched upon like the sort of the autobiographical releases. So let's talk a little bit about the records that you've put out. And you mentioned that you had a record label for a while, but this is more coming under the umbrella of Lush, isn't it? What you've been doing of
These
late.
are, yeah. Well, I mean, the record label's gone anyway.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I don't know. It's I can't explain it, right? It's just what I've done is because folk music, if you listen to most folk music, it's not, they didn't write it, right? So if we go back to that earlier track, Past Caring, I'm able to
Yeah.
say, well, that was Henry Lawson's poem, and about five different people have covered it, and someone else put it to music. And yeah, I think it's Phil Lobie put it to music. So that's normal for them to do cover versions. So I basically just started to ask them all if they cover the different tracks that I liked from that particular decade. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. It's surprising, and I mean, I told you I'm a bit prone to mischief, so it's a bit naughty, really. I'd often choose. Well, there's a marvelous track called "The Island" by Paul Brady, which is about the troubles in Northern Ireland, and it's a fabulous track, and it's very famous in Ireland, but not outside. Um, Now I've got a friend, Rihanna, whose father was in prison during that period of time. And I was just bloody ages summoning up the nerve to say, I don't suppose you'd sing The Island for me, would you? And I thought I was going to be deep shit, I thought she was going to go for it. And she said, oh, yes, absolutely. We used to sit and wait to go and see my dad with my mum, and we'd sing it in the car.
Incredible.
And so that, again, I mean, it's a little self-indulgent. I don't think we even mentioned that in that on the notes or anything, but that's what I'm looking for all the time. I'm looking for a real introvert and give him the most rocky, hard track. There's a lovely guy, Morse Brown, right, who he's so introverted, and he plays the cello wonderfully. And I give him all the real hard rock numbers,
Yeah.
which really works because cellos work really well. As you know, if you've ever seen two cellos playing, it really works well. And I just love the idea that he's having to do these macho, sort of strutting tracks. And he loves them. He seems to go. He goes for it every time. Anyway, so yeah, so different. It's just that little different angle on it, isn't it? Johnny Kelsey, who's got like a Bangor drummers, suddenly giving them a track to cover, or a lovely sitar player I know well. And then I gave her some really obscure thing from an obscure track called The Raven, which was covered by a Swedish folk band with a lot of heavy dum ding dum dum noises. I gave her to do that on the sitar, and that came back beautifully with Rodri. Rodri Marston helps me a lot with that, with all of that stuff, and that just came back wonderfully. So yeah, so it's I think the best you could call them was esoteric.
I'd like to sort of see a sort of snapshot of, if you could tell me a little about a snapshot of your day, Mark, when you decide to start putting together another compilation, like the day-to-day running of Lush. Surely putting together a record and researching it and finding tracks and artists that you want to work with must be all-encompassing. Like, how do you sort of balance it?
No, it's relaxing, isn't it? So I'm basically, someone's asked me what's going to happen about some multi-million thing, which has dragged on forever, and you just want to go to sleep when people start talking about it. And then you get home and you can think about. I mean, we're just about to start the next album. We're just about to start. I'm trying to resist it because let's try and get this one out there first. And you start thinking about, well, what was that decade like? How did it work? I mean, if we take the 80s one, I was in the shed just here making product nearly all the time, starting about 5 o'clock in the morning, working for the body shop, well, selling them stuff. And so I had a record player in there. I just put records on from first thing, and mainly talk and all sorts of other people. So you think back to that period, and one of the disadvantages of the 60s, I was so bleeding broke. I couldn't buy much music. Do you know what I mean? So what I did have got played a lot. Um, so it's just part of my life. I mean, I can't formulate without playing music. I mean, I don't do any perfumery. I'll often make a playlist beforehand. And some of the themes I return to over and over again, Massive Attacks, typical, that deep resonant sound from that period, that makes great perfumes. Radiohead, Street Spirit, that made a stunning, that's one of the best selling products. It's not called that, it's called Karma, mainly because a couple of guys were in the room with me at the time, and they had the stupid van with a flower on the side, and they got a ticket, and I actually heard them say in the 90s, bad karma, man. And so you just say, oh, God, right, it's going to be called Karma then, this perfume.
You mentioned Talk
Yeah.
a moment ago. They're one of my favourite bands. Have you worked a product around Talk?
I haven't worked a product, but one of the people that has covered different tracks for me. So some people are very easygoing and some people aren't. And her name's Julie Tippett. And people might remember her from performing with Brian, someone around the Orga Trinity. Do you remember that? Wheels on Fire. So she is now a fabulous, 80-year-old fabulous jazz teacher and singer. And I go along to her with something. I mean, I go along. I send it in like some little trembling boy, and she may or may not go for it. Now, when I suggested a talk track, oh yeah, absolutely, went for it. And Simon Emerson produced it, and it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
What track was it, Mark?
Hang on a minute, I'm gonna have to look.
Sorry, I've put you on the spot here, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll come back to you on that. But I know the tracks it wasn't, but I can't remember.
I think Gina's looking for it. That's great.
Yeah, good.
So in the meantime, we touched on it earlier, and you mentioned that you wasn't a big clubber but I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you for a track that would have soundtracked those years.
Um, well, Little Fluffy Clouds, right, by the Orb. So basically, I'm formulating, and I had a period of time where I was only really listening to trance and dance tracks. I mean, there was that marvelous period, wasn't there? It was just that was the music. It was just bloody splendid. And Little Blue Clouds. I mean, as soon as you think that, and you can make a bubble bath, right? And I can make them solid, not in a bottle. And I can make them like a blue swirly thing. And do you know what I mean? And then you start getting a feeling for it. So it's got to be patchouli, hasn't it? It's got to be patchouli. It's got to be a bit of olibanum, which is incense. And so you do your perfume and you do your product, and that's blue skies, little fluffy white clouds, yeah. Because you make fluffy white clouds in the bath. Right, Life's What You Make It by Julie Tippett. Okay.
Fantastic. What a shame.
The So that was it. Which of course, when she's in her 80s as well, is more pertinent.
Hmm.
And I think she did it in the year of his death.
Yeah.
So it was just everything about it was right. You know what I mean? It was, in my opinion. Anyway, back to Fluffy White Clouds. Then the perfection is when the guy from the Orb comes in and buys it. So at that moment, that now I said earlier on, I don't care if people buy it. I certainly care if they're the people that did the original piece of music. As far as I'm aware, he still comes in now and buys it and uses it, which is nice, isn't it? I mean, just coming back on that, another story. When we first started, we were even more anarchic than we are now. And we had a couple of products. We did one for Prince Charles and one for Lady Diana when they were a couple. And we covered them in tin foil and put googly eyes on them on the bottles. I had a cloak, I think, and something else and something. And then Princess Margaret came in and bought three of them. And
No way.
that's like perfect then, isn't it? Life is complete. You don't need anything else. I mean, that is exactly what you're looking for. You just want that moment. Yeah, you move on then and do some other stupid thing.
Fantastic. And yeah, a Little Fluffy Clouds is and it was such a strange time that point in the 90s. I think, as you mentioned, Massive Attack there were having their moment, and Portishead was coming through. And I think that the Orb just kind of done that kind of trancey sort of chill out thing that took music in a completely new direction. And I think, you know, all of a sudden, they're releasing singles that were like 22 minutes long. Yeah. And it was, I mean, that's prog in its essence, I guess. And
well, it is, but I mean, nothing since has been like prog, and I think everyone should be delighted with that, because it's just a bit frightening, prog. Do you know what I mean? Suddenly you've got, someone's playing their guitar with a bow, and it's all, I don't know what to think of that. I wouldn't go. I mean, I wouldn't go to someone and say you really should listen to prog. I think, but I suppose it did educate us to be very open to all sorts of different music.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the sort of late 80s, early 90s was such a, again, like very similar to that. I know a lot of people call it the second summer of love, with movements in acid house and what was going on in guitar music, being a sort of 5, 6, 7 year period of such progression that, could be sort of paralleled with what was going on, 65 to 70. And very, very exciting times. And I think also the Orb, obviously look back, because that's Ricky Lee Jones, isn't it? That sings that. And what a voice. What a voice.
It's lovely. And all of that. So that whole period, I think, to be honest, it was very rich for product. I mean, a lot of the product that we invented using that music is still out there being sold. Whereas you could, quite a lot of stuff just disappears. The top of the hat, do you know what I mean? But that was really great. So, but I mean, so Blue Sky is still very popular as a product. People are buying it all the time.
Superb. I'm going to take you home for this track, Mark, and ask you to tell me a favourite song from an artist from your home county, please.
Well, this is got to be Simon Emerson, because what happened there was that like I said, I like a lot of the stuff. I like a lot of folk music anyway. And Simon Emerson was a bird watcher, and I'm a really keen bird watcher. Okay, one of the things I write books on bird song, and I love bird song in all regards. So he wrote to me offering me free tickets to his gig, right, at the Paul Art Centre, and all the other birders that were local. We could all go for free. You know, it doesn't matter how much money you got. Everyone likes to go for free, don't they? And so we went and saw, and his band at that time was the Imagine Village, which had Martin Carthy and Liza Carthy and
Oh wow.
Billy Bragg, and it had a lovely poet, you know, that died recently. The can't think of his name for a moment, but it had all these people in it, and it was a very much a celebration of Englishness, not Scottish, not well, it was Englishness. Um, and so I went to the concert and I really liked it. And I've been trying to sort out a spa for Lush for some time. Benjamin Zephaniah, that's who else it was.
Mm.
I've been trying to sort out a spa and I haven't been doing very well. It's been going on for a couple of years. Plenty of people have been off to different spas having nice treatments. Nothing had actually come of it. And a young member of my staff came and gave me a piece of her mind. She said, I've been waiting for years now. I might as well go and work for the someone else, you know what I mean? Because you're never going to do this spa, blah, 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 blah. So I said to her, why don't you just help me then? You know, let's do it together. Give me a hand with it. And anyway, she was really superb. And I got back from this concert and I'm sitting in there with her and we're talking about what spa treatments, things we could do. And I said, one of the things I hate, I like Buddha Bar and I like the music, but I don't want to go in for a massage and they put on Buddha Bar. I'll give you a classic example, right? You've spent all your money, you've gone to Morocco, you're in Richard Whatnot's bloody hotel. They've got the most stunning spa room cut out of rock with wispy white sort of curtains blowing in the gentle breeze, right? You go in there, you lie down, you can hear a nightingale singing, and it fills your heart with joy. And they come in and they switch on Buddha Bar. And the whole thing's bleeding ruined, isn't it? You just can't do that. Not there, not in that way. It shows complete lack of understanding of where you are and what you're doing. So I had a good moan to her and I said, I can't cope if we have, you can imagine being keen on music. I can't cope if we have some old crap for the thing. So she said, well, why don't you phone him up and ask him to do the music? I don't know about you, but I'm not very good at phoning up people, you know, hello, you know, I'm a fan. Thank you for sending me the tickets. Yes, I really love the concert. I don't suppose you could do some stuff for my spa, could you? And he swears blind. He thought it was a bloody corner shop, you know, SPAR.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and that's his joke, and he ran it all the way through. Anyway, he did the most stunning soundtracks with a lot of these artists that I use in these things, you know, for the different treatments. And so, so I've chosen a track from there, "Let the Bells Ring Out," which he wrote for actually, and I recommend people who like music because this particular treatment still involves ear candling and gong bath, so that you really are getting your hearing to absolute perfection. I'm going to go soon because we're coming into spring and I want to hear all the bird sound as best I can. So you can actually tune up your hearing, you can refine it. Anyway, that's that particular one. Let the Bells Ring Out with Simon Emerson, Barney Moss Brown. Yeah.
Well, Mark, this is your final track, and this is where you get to champion something, and this is the question I ask you to tell us about a track that you think many people may not know that you love.
Oh, I've twisted this round, haven't I? I've been naughty. Um, this track, everyone knows this track, right? But every time you play it to anyone, sung by Mary Waterson, right, off of one of these albums, they cannot work out who it is. And it drives them stark raving bloody bonkers. And they're like, I don't know it. I know it. I know it. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't, you know, and it's just fabulous. And I've done it. You can do it to everyone, every single person you can do it to. And it's Say You'll Be There. So it's in the new album, Say You'll Be There by the Spice Girls, but sung by Mary Waterson as a semi-lament almost. And she's got such a wonderful voice, Mary. It's just so beautiful. I could have just picked all tracks by her for the whole lot, if I was honest. So that's yeah. So I've been a bit mischievous. I'm sorry about that, but I don't. No one's heard it because it's not out yet.
It's not
So
out yet,
I
no.
got that bit right.
Well, what we do is we enable people to listen to all the other tracks apart from that one at the moment because we put together a little Spotify playlist, Mark, to accompany the podcast so people can go and explore the records that we've spoken about today. But the record that we want to talk about is the one that drops on the 24th of this month.
Yep. Yeah.
And so explain a little bit more about the upcoming release.
Well, it's the same thing. It's an autobiographical collection of tracks that we listened to in the 90s. Yeah. Um, and some of them, so are they all to do with inspiring Lush products? No, no, not at all, really. Um, uh, but all sorts of mischief, everything you can possibly imagine. Trying to, let's fish it and put it.
I mean, the track listing is remarkable. It's such a nice sort of cross section of music that come out in that decade, from like big Britpop anthems through to the aforementioned kind of more sort of chilled out sort of breakbeat stuff and what was coming out of Bristol was fantastic.
It is weird. In fact, I was talking to you earlier, wasn't I, saying I don't like approaching people because now I'm older, I feel a bit creepy. I did discuss this with a couple of the people at work. They said, "No, you're not creepy, Mark. You're just weird."
That's a fine line. That's a fine line.
Yeah, you're just yeah. There we are.
Fantastic. And if people want to find out more about the record and previous releases and everything,
They can get them from Lush shops. These albums, and if you've got a record shop you like to sell them, do give me a ring. But they are esoteric and they are personal. I mean, people write autobiographies, don't they, and all that, but it wouldn't work for me. Yeah, yeah, it wouldn't work for me. I like this is autobiographical to me. This is each single track means something to me. So I just looking down all the stuff. I just lovely. Yeah, every bit of it is a sort of memory, I suppose. Really, I mean, it's exactly your program, isn't it? But in huge and self-gratifying way.
and the formats that people can get this on.
Well, as far as I'm aware, you can certainly buy it. You can certainly buy it on vinyl, which is where I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can get it. I think it will also be available on all the usual electronic things like Apple or Spotify and so on, as far as I'm aware.
Which is great, but come on, we all want that tangible, lovely bit of vinyl to.
That's the point, isn't it?
hand,
The
isn't
point
it?
is you've got to you've got to be able to, you've got to be able to read the sleeve notes and work out what else going on. And I love it. But I do understand not everybody does. But for me, yeah.
It's the question that constantly comes up, and it's a discussion point that I've had with so many musicians and actors and comedians and God knows what over the years, which is that generation, the things that I think are lost, and I don't want to sort of start teetering into being a miserable old bastard here. I think the stuff that's lost is album artwork.
Yes.
Like being able to hold and look at a big, not a little square on your phone. I like looking at a piece of album artwork. I think that is so. And for me, growing up being a music nerdy kid, I wanted to put that record on and I wanted to read the sleeve notes. I wanted to read the lyrics. I wanted to release all the little etchings around the outside. Like, what's that mean? And I was, and I think like that's lost.
Well, it's not lost to us nerds, but I mean, the point is, I could probably collect you a nerd from every year from now to the beginning of time. People love this. I just think you are talking. I suppose there were more of us educated to be nerds then, but there's still so many nerds now. Don't worry, it's all right.
That's reassuring to know. Mark, if people want to keep up to speed with all things that you're doing at Lush, head into the shop or pop to the website and keep up to speed. Is that the
Yeah,
best
but
place?
I think predominantly, I think most people know that we're not keen on social media. You know, we don't use a lot of social media, um, but we do have lovely shops and we do have a great website, and yeah, do keep in touch. I mean, you can keep in touch just by coming in and talking to someone, can't you? At our place. I mean, they're just, you know, I mean, we have the reason I can find you all those nerds. They work for us.
Mark, it's been an absolute delight chatting to you. Thank you so much for giving up your time to come on here and talk
Well,
music
it's a
with me.
pleasure. It's like I said, it's just such a relaxing thing to do, isn't it?
Oh, wonderful. I'm going to press stop, but don't go anywhere.
Right.